Welcome to the SGS Academy Learning Reimagined series, eLearning. My name is Amanda Mangan. I started with SGS in 2012 and currently manage the global SGS Academy training portfolio. I have over 25 years experience in HR, learning and development, training, recruitment and assessment, and over 10 years in the commercial global training within the TIC industry.
Thanks, Amanda. My name is Nina Farrand, and I joined SGS in 2014 as a digital content manager, and I am responsible for our global digital learning portfolio. I have over 17 years experience within the learning technology sector and have worked in both learning and development and commercial roles across private medical, legal and compliance industries.
Thank you, Nina. The agenda for today will talk through Learning Reimagined, what is e-learning, the pre-COVID situation at SGS, key considerations and the 6 E's for e-learning, SGS Lessons Learned, best practice and recommendations, the e-learning mind map, and SGS Academy solutions and support. SGS is the world's leading testing, inspection and certification company with over 89,000 employees around the world in 2,600 offices, while covering 11 global industries, allowing us to help you globally and locally. SGS offers a number of ways we can partner together, from certification, training, performance assessments, supply chain risk management, through to technical consulting. When you choose to partner with SGS, you'll be receiving what we call the SGS Difference, a mixture of industry expertise from global and local experts, global network with offices spread over 80 countries, and a quality of service offering end-to-end compliance. Is training important? Training has always been one of the areas that is quick and easy to stop and shows immediate bottom line cost benefits. The COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges it has brought to businesses has changed the way we live and learn and continues to do so. However, planning of good remote training now will benefit businesses in the future, from enhancing user confidence, staff morale and buy-in, through to commitment and ultimately increase of business productivity and performance. A small percentage of time and budget used to be allocated to digital methods such as e-learning, virtual learning, or simply a recorded WebEx or Brainshark. As training is changing, we need to ensure that delivery and access to knowledge is a simple, relevant and enjoyable experience for our users. Training has always been perceived as a means to an end, but now it will be key to the future. This has been recognised by corporate organisations who have now increased or plan to increase their future digital learning budget spend. The webinar series Learning Reimagined will talk you through the concepts of remote learning and key areas of consideration that need to be included in your planning. The focus of this presentation is e-learning. This method has many considerations that need to be factored in, from assessing technology capability and effective delivery tools, through to the management and monitoring of e-learning from a learning perspective, stakeholder business requirements, return on investment, and any mandatory administrative governance to ensure compliance. So moving on to the future trends, I would just like to show some statistics that reflect the COVID-19 impact. The e-learning industry growth shows no signs of slowing down, with a predicted annual growth rate of 15% from 2020 to 2026. Prior to the pandemic, less than 20% of our SGS global offices offered any type of digital learning. This has now significantly changed, with 80 to 100% of our offices now offering e-learning courses as a standard product through our Oracle-based LMS eLearn. SGS spend and resource allocation for digital learning has increased. This includes digital learning services, digital platforms, and digital learning content. 90% of most major corporations now use e-learning, compared to just 4% in 1995. Ongoing training costs for internal and external resources will decrease over time. This will be due to the increase in technology and associated automation this generates. Some organisations have saved up to 60% in travel costs. The use of technology will streamline and focus employees' time, as e-learning takes 40 to 60% less time than traditional learning, as well as streamlining business processes to reduce errors and delays, generating a more cost-effective approach for organisations. There will be an increasing demand for digital learning from top management and stakeholders through to individual employees and your learner end users. Employee motivators for e-learning is 95% preferring individual learning pace and 84% of learners preferring the no travel. So, what can you do as an organisation? Those of you who have attended our previous webinars on the new normal for learning and Learning Reimagined virtual instructor-led training may recognise the 6 E's that SGS Academy work against when undertaking new projects and course development. It's important that you approach your training development and delivery holistically and consider all aspects of the learner's requirements as much as the actual training content itself. If you would like further information on this, you can download our recordings, which are available on our website. By using the 6 E's, SGS Academy has implemented an effective digital system to enhance our offerings to our employees and clients by digitising our courses, offering these through e-learning using our Oracle-based learning management system. You will recognise the incorporation of these 6 E's in the creation and development of all SGS Academy learning, and you will be able to identify these throughout the following information on e-learning presented by Nina. Here are the main learning methodologies that can be used as a standalone training course or as part of a bundled solution. The methods need to be user-friendly with a clear learner journey and end result. There are, of course, pros and cons to any delivery method. This webinar is focused on e-learning. We have already presented the virtual instructor-led training, Learning Reimagined, and will be presenting a further Learning Reimagined webinar focusing on blended learning in a few weeks' time. I would now like to pass you over to Nina.
Thanks, Amanda. So let me start with a brief definition of e-learning. E-learning can be defined as self-paced or self-directed training, which is available to learners at any time via the internet. It is an effective training tool for reaching a wide audience and delivering a consistent message. E-learning has been in existence in many different forms since the early 1980s. As technology has improved, so has e-learning. We have shifted from courses on CD-ROMs to fluid, web-accessible content. In more recent times, e-learning has continued to evolve with trends such as multi-device accessibility, video, and gamification now becoming a staple of e-learning design. At SGS, our digital learning portfolio includes eLearning, where our courses are hosted on our learning management system and accessed remotely at any time by the learner. Virtual instructor-led training, or VILT, where a physical tutor delivers a course in real time to remote learners using an online tool. And blended learning, where a combination of delivery methods such as e-learning, VILT, face-to-face classes, reading materials and assignments, etc., are packaged together into a wider training program. Training is fundamental to an employee's growth and satisfaction within an organization, and the need for training during this pandemic hasn't stopped. However, our ability to deliver traditional classroom training isn't currently feasible in the way we once knew. At SGS, we began our journey with e-learning back in 2016. So we already had a capable global learning management system in place and e-learning content which could easily be translated and accessed by learners on a multitude of devices. Thankfully, this meant we had a good basis from which to work upon when COVID-19 emerged. However, the pandemic highlighted our reliance and comfort with classroom training as our primary delivery method, and so we needed to adapt quickly to continue meeting the needs and demands of our clients. Our two main focus areas were, 1, increasing our e-learning portfolio, which we did by producing e-learning courses for the topics we previously successfully delivered via the classroom. This helped to ensure our clients could continue to undertake some form of training during the pandemic. And 2, translating our e-learning portfolio. We were already used to translating our internal e-learning courses, but up to this point, we hadn't translated any of our external e-learning courses. Understanding that everyone has been impacted by this pandemic, we started to focus on the translation of our external learning portfolio. So, taking a step away from COVID, I wanted to explain some key considerations for anyone who is new to embedding e-learning into their organization. Let's start with understanding your landscape. It's easy to begin by looking at current e-learning trends such as augmented and virtual reality and believe that's the direction you need to go in. However, it's crucial that you start with a proper analysis of requirements. At SGS, we captured and prioritized our requirements using MOSCO, which is a prioritization method where you group requirements into must-have, should-have, could-have, and won't-have categories. This exercise helped us to list everything and then prioritize them to make sure we focused on the right areas. Some points to address as part of your analysis exercise are 1, talking with other stakeholders to see what they're asking for. Is the e-learning to complement existing training, replace older training programs, or as part of a standalone delivery method? 2, working with your IT department to see whether there could be any potential barriers. For example, some employees may not have access to computers, poor internet connectivity may be a factor at some office locations, and hardware limitations could impact things like your use of audio in e-learning. 3. Learn about your end user, as they play a crucial role in how you design your e-learning. Be aware that some learners may appreciate more text-heavy content, whereas others might prefer a gamified approach or brief, straight-to-the-point content. 4. Are your learners global and therefore require translations? Translating text throughout graphics, animation, and video can be both costly and time-consuming. So this could be another key consideration, which means you'll have to come up with a simpler design. 5. E-learning courses will be hosted on a learning management system for learners to access. If one already exists in your organization, then ensure the content you're producing works as expected and fully understand the system functionality and any possible barriers it may have. So next, we move on to strong design principles. Good instructional design is fundamental to the success of your e-learning courses. If courses have robust design principles, then it'll make for an effective learning tool. Some points to consider as part of this are: 1. Focus on learner-centric design. Make sure you know and understand your end user and continually refer to this during the development of your course. Learners benefit from checkpoints, interactivity, and relatable content, and these will help them stay focused and engaged. 2. If translations are a requirement, then keep this in mind as you're developing your course. Translations should only commence once the master course is developed and implemented, so that you can ensure no further edits are required. Translations for video, animation, graphics, and other such assets will need to be considered. For example, if you have voiceover, then re-recording localized versions could be expensive. Instead, consider just translating subtitles. 3. Most e-learning authoring tools in the market today produce responsive content. This basically means that the course will work across different devices, such as desktop computers, laptops, tablets, and smartphones. With an increasing use of mobile devices, it's important that you design your content with smaller screen sizes in mind. For example, heavy use of text may display well on a laptop, but when viewed on a smartphone will require a lot of scrolling by the learner. So keep this in mind when designing your course, and make sure you test across multiple devices as you are building the course to ensure everything works as expected. And the final key consideration is be prepared to continually adapt and evolve. It is a good idea to factor in future analysis exercises to ensure the tools you're using and the e-learning courses you're producing are still effective and relevant. Technology continually changes. Look at how much mobile phones have evolved over the years. Technology is the backbone of e-learning, so it's best practice to assess what learning technology trends are emerging and seeing whether they would be suitable for your own learning technology strategy. Likewise, having evaluation checkpoints to see what learners think of your courses will help to ensure you fix specific pain points you didn't see during the original build, and therefore reduce any learner frustration. As part of our initial examination using the 6 E's, we considered the following. Examine your business requirements for e-learning. You need to understand why you're implementing e-learning into your business so you can ensure you remain focused and address core needs. Is it to meet the short-term need for replacing a reduction in face-to-face training during the COVID pandemic, or part of a wider business strategy to grow and embed e-learning as a core training solution? Explore. As mentioned earlier, we undertook a full analysis of our requirements. This was then used as a basis for market research to see what e-learning authoring tools and other technologies could help us meet these requirements in a simple and cost-effective way. Ensure that learners still have access to training and that this access is as simple as possible. Often, technology can be perceived as a barrier to those who aren't comfortable with it. So we ensured that everything available to our learners, from marketing materials through to purchase, course launch, and navigation, was as straightforward as possible. Enable. E-learning was a new delivery method for SGS. So we have undertaken a journey of breaking down barriers and upskilling our sales team and training academies about our e-learning and how it is a great addition to our existing delivery methods. Establish. We have a defined first, second, and third level support model in place. Our first level support team are equipped with the knowledge and tools to address the typical hurdles encountered by learners, and all queries are tracked so we can monitor and implement improvements. We also have defined process flows and documentation in place for the projects we work on. These processes help to ensure a consistent, tried and tested approach is used at all times. Evaluate. This is integral to the ADDIE process we follow. ADDIE is an acronym which stands for Analysis, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. And these are the 5 main phases we work through during an e-learning project. We utilize the questionnaire functionality of our learning management system to ask our learners predetermined questions which feed into our annual course reviews for continual improvement. As we have adapted to change and embrace the new normal, e-learning has become fundamental to the delivery of training at SGS. We have encountered the following challenges throughout our journey with e-learning. Translations were a blocker which were preventing us from offering a truly global e-learning portfolio. Translations can often be the most expensive part of e-learning development. However, it's always been a requirement at SGS, and so our master English courses have been developed with this in mind. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have produced around 30 individual translations for our external e-learning portfolio, and this is a key area we are continuing to focus on. Stakeholder buy-in is crucial to the success of any project. E-learning was at one point a new endeavour for SGS, and so we needed to ensure key players clearly understood what we were implementing, so they could help communicate this change. Prior to the pandemic, our e-learning courses served to complement our wider training portfolio. But COVID has shifted everyone's mindset, and digital training is now being increasingly accepted as a primary delivery method. Striking the middle ground between high-end and effective e-learning. It's easy to get carried away with technology and strive for high-end design. However, it's always worth grounding yourself and ensuring that your requirements remain at the forefront. An example of this is with the use of audio throughout a course. If done correctly, it can lead to a very effective and engaging learning tool. But if your course is for a global audience, or if the content needs to be maintained regularly, then instead favouring text and music will make ongoing edits and translations cheaper and quicker. And finally, speed to market. Prior to the pandemic, our development timeframe for a single e-learning course would be between 8 to 12 weeks. This would take us from the initial analysis stage through to the implementation of the course on our learning management system. As a result of COVID, we have shifted to a rapid development model and reduced this time frame down to between 6 to 10 weeks. This was to ensure we could get e-learning to our clients during a time of uncertainty, and we achieved this reduction by further streamlining our tried and tested ADDIE process. Crucially, this reduction hasn't negatively impacted the overall quality of our e-learning courses. Here are some questions and considerations to ask yourself if faced with the same challenges. Are translations required? Even if they aren't needed straight away, this is a question worth asking at the beginning of any project. Make sure you understand what translations are required and schedule enough time to work on them once the master course development is complete. Break down any potential barriers by engaging stakeholders and clarifying misunderstood points. It's essential that you engage and communicate with the relevant people on a regular basis, as this will allow you to clarify any misunderstanding which could serve as a barrier. Humanize any technical elements and demonstrate what is trying to be achieved so everyone can fully understand and buy into the strategy of change. If e-learning is new to your organisation, it can help to start off small and implement enhancements and new technology over time. As long as your wider requirements are defined and you have scope for growth, starting with a controlled and restricted e-learning course is sometimes a helpful approach. It allows you to introduce e-learning safely into your organisation. More functionality can be switched on with future e-learning courses. Defining a robust development process allows for streamlining and other efficiencies. A set way of working will allow you to see where continued improvements can be made so that future projects are more streamlined. Perform an initial requirements analysis to fully understand short and long-term learning technology needs. This will help you to focus on addressing any specific issues and meeting the needs of the business and your learners. Understand the functionality and potential blockers of your learning management system so you can implement workable solutions and avoid issues. Examples of common problems are login and navigation issues, a non-responsive user interface, and lack of system translations to complement the translated e-learning. These negative interactions can impact the effectiveness of the course you're launching. Focus on learner-centric design to ensure you meet the needs and expectations of your learner. This will help ensure learner satisfaction and knowledge transfer remains high. Give learners the opportunity to pause and practice what they have learnt. Design courses so that you aren't just telling the learner. Make sure you provide natural pauses and opportunities for the learner to practice and absorb. This helps to embed the new learning, but also maintain higher learner engagement. Be cautious of too much text and audio. Sensory overload isn't conducive to effective learning. Providing text allows the learner to read and absorb the information at their own pace and is a low-tech but effective solution. Audio can have limitations for learners without sound or for those unable to switch on audio due to the environment they are in. Take time to fully test and pilot your e-learning courses before final launch. E-learning courses should be tested on your learning management system during the development phase to ensure they work as expected. A pilot tests the launch process, but could also capture missed points as the course is being viewed by learners previously uninvolved in the project. Consider developing e-learning which is accessible to as many people as possible. Following web content accessibility guidelines can help to ensure your e-learning courses can be enjoyed by all. Moving on to my last slide of the webinar, this mind map provides you with 6 key points to consider as you transition from classroom to e-learning. 1. Start by using the 6 E's for e-learning to review the requirements for your business. Examine your business requirements for e-learning. Is it to meet the short-term need for replacing a reduction in face-to-face training during the COVID pandemic, or part of a wider business strategy to grow and embed e-learning as a core training solution? Explore. Take the time to define your business requirements and prioritize them. When looking for e-learning authoring tools and other systems, complete a full market analysis and align your requirements against their capabilities to ensure you select the most appropriate solution. Ensure that learners will be able to access your e-learning with ease. If you're producing e-learning for an internal audience, then work with your IT department and your learning management system owners to make sure launches will run smoothly. If you're producing e-learning for an external audience, then work with appropriate teams to ensure marketing, communication channels, and e-commerce are geared up to handle launches. Enable your learners, management team, and stakeholders by upskilling them on e-learning and your digital learning strategy. Breaking down any barriers and gaining support and buy-in will help with overall adoption of a new training delivery method. Establish a robust support model to appease any learner frustration. In addition to this, focus on defining clear process flows and documentation for course development, etc. This will give project stakeholders a clear understanding of required work and expected output. Evaluate both your learners' satisfaction and knowledge retention once they have completed an e-learning course, but also feedback from stakeholders as you work with them on course development. This will allow you to continually adapt and improve, which will in turn increase overall satisfaction. Point 2. Identify your audience and consider their needs. Are they able to access the e-learning easily? Have you considered any accessibility requirements? Will the learner be engaged and motivated throughout the e-learning? Point 3. Make sure that the e-learning you're producing is technology agnostic as much as possible. Will your e-learning work across a wide range of devices and IT infrastructures? Is your learning management system capable of hosting the courses you produce? And can it accommodate the increased volume of learner access? Is the e-learning authoring tool you select able to meet the needs you identified from your original requirements analysis? Point 4. Identify the e-learning courses you need to develop by speaking directly with learners and your stakeholders. Focusing on course development in the areas it's needed will greatly benefit your organisation and your learners. Point 5. A smooth implementation of your e-learning courses will ensure learner satisfaction. Is your support team aware of your launch schedule? Have managers and learners been communicated to with clear expectations on completion criteria? Have you completed a successful pilot and test of the course? And finally, point 6. Remember to plan for evaluation during course development. Agree with your stakeholders what data you want to capture and how this will feed into continual improvement of your e-learning courses.
Thank you, Nina. Hopefully the last few slides have given you some food for thought and helped you with looking towards implementing your remote learning policy. If you need any support with any points mentioned during this presentation, please do not hesitate to contact us for a further discussion. We do have many years of training experience from individual learning requirements through to global corporate organisation rollouts, providing one-off training courses through to blended solutions internally and externally in multiple languages. We deliver standard courses against many course categories within the majority of industries and have experience in working with clients to bespoke or tailor courses to meet their specific needs. Thank you for listening today to our Learning Reimagined e-learning webinar. Do you have any questions? When converting classroom courses into e-learning. So I can pick up that question actually, Nina. As previously mentioned in the presentation, e-learning does significantly reduce the delivery time in comparison to face-to-face training. So the reduction in time does depend on the subject content. So really to look at, is it a very technical subject that knowledge imparting is a key area, or can this knowledge be disseminated into a case study that could take into consideration a number of learning points? So does the e-learning scope require evaluation requirements? So again, for example, do you require a knowledge test at the end that can be automatically marked through the tool? Or an on-the-job self-evaluation of working practices that needs to be reviewed? E-learning is an asynchronous way of learning, so really every learner can work comfortably at their own pace. So looking at your scope and taking everything into consideration, on average, the approximate time reduction from a face-to-face course can range from 30 to 60%. I hope that answers your question. There's another question that's come in that I think I'd like to pass over to Nina. Nina, what should we consider in e-learning course development when we need the course in multiple languages?
Sure, thanks, Amanda. So there are a few points that you need to test and understand before you start developing additional languages for any of your e-learning courses. Firstly, how can your authoring tool create these courses? Can it combine all of the languages into a single course file so that the learners can select their language upon launching the course? And if this isn't possible, then you will need to develop separate versions of the course to be produced for each required language. Secondly, you'll need to understand the capabilities of your learning management system. If you can combine all of the languages into a single course file, then can the system work with that file? Also, does the system have the capability to send email notifications and to display itself in the same languages that your course will be built in? If you do need separate versions of the course per required language, then make sure your system is configured in a way that learners can easily navigate and access the right language. And thirdly, ensure you have a robust process in place for producing translations, whether that's using external translation services or your own internal capabilities. So once you have all of those points defined, developing translations should be straightforward. You should always establish whether translations are needed at the beginning of a project, and this is to ensure that your design considerations, such as audio and choice of characters, etc., are appropriate. Be aware that some languages, German for example, can alter the layout due to the fact it requires more text space, and other languages such as Arabic need to display right to left rather than left to right. So always ensure that the master language is developed, tested and approved before working on translations, so you avoid having to implement amends across multiple languages. And finally, make sure that you fully test each additional language, as sometimes longer text can affect how they display on devices such as smartphones and tablets.
Thank you, Nina. The next question that's come in that I can pick up for this is, would you recommend e-learning over other delivery methods for staff training? So again, really referring back, I think, to my previous answer as well, which is quite relevant. Again, it does depend on the subject. What we tend to find in SGS is what works well within our courses tends to be the use of e-learning for our knowledge-based learning. So in this way, it gives the learners the opportunity to learn the knowledge or the fundamentals of the subject at their own pace, really, without being pressurised by others in the classroom, or for those who maybe are more experienced or more confident. The knowledge e-learning can then be used as a prerequisite for skills training, which can then be delivered either face-to-face or virtually. So it's really a bit of a win-win, I think, for all concerned. So the learners can all join a skills course with hopefully the same basic fundamental knowledge that they've learnt during the e-learning. and the tutor can then focus on teaching the skills to a group of learners that all have a similar knowledge level at the beginning, and then being able to build on their capabilities. So I hope that answers your question. And there's another question that's come through, Nina. Is there a standard way e-learning courses should be structured?
Thanks, Amanda. So you'll generally find that a well-designed e-learning course includes knowledge transfer, natural pauses, reflection points, and just generally opportunities for the learner to engage in practice. And these points are typically bookended by both an introduction and a final assessment. However, that approach isn't the only way, or indeed the best way, to structure an e-learning course. Really, you need to allow the findings from your initial analysis to guide you. For example, not all courses may need a final assessment. Different learning preferences of your audience could steer your design principles. And of course, your own development capabilities, your software, and your IT environment could also impact your structure. Ultimately, the point I would stress here is that each e-learning project should be looked at individually to ensure you produce a structure which will best benefit your learners. I've had another question, Amanda, if I may. We've been asked that for large companies, is there an easy way to track learning completion and results? So I can answer this one. The strength of tracking actually lies within your learning management system more than just your e-learning courses. All learning management systems, will have reporting functionality, and it's always best to investigate and test these before you roll out a large training program to make sure that they're providing you with the data that you want to measure and capture. Typically, they will display, all of the learners that have been enrolled onto a course, how many attempts they've taken to complete the course, whether they've passed that course successfully or unsuccessfully, their passing score, and also more useful things like how long the learner has been in the course, so that you can really understand whether they have taken the estimated duration of the course to complete it, or if they've struggled and actually taken longer to complete it. So there's a lot you can get from these reports which actually help with your evaluation and continual improvement moving forwards, but they will really help with the actual point of this question, which is in regards to tracking. So hopefully that answers that question for you.
Okay, thank you, Nina. Some more questions that are coming in. One question is, in public classes, we meet public from other companies and can do benchmarking or networking. How would you do that with remote public training? Okay, so there is a way of doing that. So obviously the topic for today was on e-learning, which is very much focused on the asynchronous training of e-learning, which is accessing online training. What I would suggest that if you're looking for a course that you still want to do benchmarking, networking, and being able to communicate and interact with others, is to look at doing the virtual instructor-led training, which I know, as Nina described, is the training that it's a tutor-led remote training session. So it can still be run in a similar style to a classroom, which still means you get to be able to communicate, interact, network, benchmark, etc., with other people within your class, within your group of learners. If that's something that you would require more information on, then we have already completed a previous webinar on virtual instructor-led training. So I would strongly advise that if you can access that recording, is to definitely listen to that one. Okay, I could just move on to another quick question that I can just answer. Are the SGS e-learning programs accredited by any specific body? Yes, we do have some of our e-learning programs are accredited. We do have some FSSC accredited e-learning to our version 5, and we also have an accredited IRCA blended QMS lead auditor course, in which it is made up of e-learning prerequisites and then face-to-face or virtual instructor-led training, skills objectives training. So our e-learning prerequisites as part of our knowledge learning are also accredited by the IRCA as well. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next question, how can you ensure that participants are actually attending the virtual instructor-led training sessions? Okay, so there is quite a bit of information on the virtual instructor-led training. Again, rather than detract the focus from e-learning, which is the subject of today's, I would strongly suggest that you do review the virtual instructor-led training webinar that we ran a few weeks ago. There are ways of ensuring that participants are attending, and a lot of it is to do with how the course is written, how the course is structured, and also looking at the technology and the tools that you use to deliver that session. For that particular question, I'm happy to pick up and have an offline conversation with somebody to discuss that further, but there are different ways of being able to do that. As I said, everything's from around course development and course structure. Nina, I've got a question for you. Can you tell which e-learning platforms you are using in addition to ON24?
Yeah, sure. So for our e-learning, we have in the past used Articulate. That is a very popular tool to use. At the moment, we aren't using that for our courses, our e-learning course development. We're using something called Adapt Learning, which is a HTML5 fully responsive authoring tool. And with regards to virtual classroom, just quickly, I know that isn't the point of this meeting, but we have used Zoom and also Adobe Connect across the board. So we use both of those depending on the type of training that needs to be delivered.
Okay, thank you, Nina. So I'm just moving through the questions. Okay, Nina, this is the appropriate length of e-learning sessions. How often should we schedule short breaks?
Yep, I can answer that one.
Great.
So there's really 2 points that should steer this. One is the subject of the e-learning course you're developing, and also the other one is the intended audience that will be completing this course. I think it's probably quite common knowledge that the younger working generation that are coming in do have a shorter attention span. If you look at the use of YouTube for just-in-time learning is one example of that. So as a general rule of thumb, we don't like our e-learning courses to exceed 45 minutes in duration. For some of our programs, such as our blended programs, we need to exceed that. So we do that by actually splitting them into separate modules, so there is a forced break that the learner needs to take there. And that's, an overwhelming amount of learning that they need to take in one go. But for other things, we always try our best to focus on bite-sized learning as our initial design principle. And that is something that I would recommend, certainly based on current learning technology trends.
Okay, thank you, Nina. There are some other questions coming through about how to have a better interaction with trainees through activities designed. Any consideration need to look into whilst preparing the training materials. Again, I think this does refer to the virtual instructor-led training. So again, I would suggest that if people want to go back to have a look at or review our virtual instructor-led training webinar, I think that will really be able to help to answer some of these questions. Okay. Okay, I think some of the other questions that are coming through are around the virtual instructor-led training. So at this point, if we get any further questions through, what we'll do is we will be putting together a Q&A section, and also what we'll do within that Q&A section is we will put that together and also send a recording of the virtual instructor-led webinar as well as the e-learning webinar. So also this presentation will be shared throughout our social media channels and can be checked on demand. So I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you all for joining us, and looking forward to speaking to you all on the next webinar for blended learning, which will be hosted on April the 21st. So please have a great rest of the day, have a good evening, and stay safe. Thank you very much. Goodbye.